In the dawn's like boots on the ground, the leaves crunch beneath as we head down. There's something about the woods, and for the peace the quiet we heed the call. Won't you join me on this trail, dear, where the deer stand tall and the air so clear?
You're listening to my favorite podcast, The Big Buck Registry.
Big Buck Registries.
Big Buck Registries.
Big Buck Registries.
The Big Buck Registries Deer Hunt Podcast.
Hello, fellow deer hunters. J. Scott Ammon here, and welcome to a very special edition of the Big Buck Registries Deer Hunt Podcast. Today, we're kicking off something new by reaching back to where it all began. This show started as a simple idea: record the stories, knowledge, and voices of everyday hunters across America. I wasn't looking for celebrities. I was looking for the guy who grew up chasing bucks through farm country, the bow tech in the back room who knew more than the catalog, and the folks who'd learned the hard way and came back better. Over the years, we built a virtual museum of hunting stories, and it's still growing. But sometimes, when I go back and listen to the old episodes, especially the ones from 2013, 2014, 2015, I realize something important. The wisdom still holds up. So today, we're launching the BBR Evergreen Series, a project to revisit the most timeless episodes from our early days and bring them back, remastered and reimagined for the modern hunter. You'll hear the original interviews, like the one you're about to listen to with Randy Gagne, but we're also layering in fresh commentary, gear updates, and even brand new episodes along the way. This is a chance to reconnect with voices that still matter and share them with a new generation of whitetail hunters. Now, back in 2013, we didn't have Zoom or AI audio tools. We recorded some of these conversations over good old landlines. But thanks to today's tech, we've been able to enhance and restore the original audio, giving it a sound that's clearer, tighter, and easier to listen to. It's not quite studio quality, but it's close. And the content, still rock solid. There's no better way to start this series than with episode 15, a conversation I had with master bow technician Randy Gagne of Morse's Sporting Goods in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Now, Randy wasn't just a bow tech. He was the guy you went to when no one else could figure it out. People drove in from Maine, Vermont, Connecticut, just to have him fit their draw length dial in their peep or get rid of the buzz in their setup. And I'll never forget one moment at Morse's, watching a frustrated hunter walk in with a bow that couldn't group at 20 yards. Randy listened, nodded, put it on the press, made a few subtle adjustments, and within minutes had that thing shooting darts. The customer left grinning like he'd just shot a 10-pointer. That's the kind of technician and person Randy is. In this episode, we covered everything: bow maintenance, broadhead tuning, crossbows, rest types, peep rotation, string life, and the effective range of an ethical shot. And while his advice hasn't changed, the gear around it definitely has. Let's talk about risers and cams. Back in 2013, Randy and I talked about the Hoyt Carbon Element. It was revolutionary at the time. Today, carbon risers are the norm on high-end bows, like the Hoyt RX-8 and the Matthews Lift. They're warmer to the touch, lighter in hand, and quieter in the stand. Cam systems? Whole new level. Bowtech's Deadlock lets you micro-adjust cam lean in seconds. No press needed. Matthews' switch weight system lets you change draw weight and let off just by swapping modules. Now, that's a level of adjustability you couldn't dream of in 2013. String tech has taken a leap too. Remember the old peep aligning rubber tubes? Randy and I talked about how often they'd break or dry rot. But today, brands like GAS, 60X, and America's Best are building pre-stretched strings with materials like BCY 452X. As John Dudley says, with a well-built string, you don't need a crutch. That peep stays where it should be, season after season. Arrows? Oh man, we've moved from standard carbon to micro-diameter shafts with high FOC setups and brass inserts for deeper penetration and better wind resistance. Looking at the Victory VAP TKOs, Day 6 HDs, Easton Sonic 6.0s, the consistency is better than anything we had 10 years ago. And broadheads? Rear deploying mechanicals like sever, fly just like field points, and cut like a buzzsaw. Fixed heads like Iron Will or Magnus are built to tolerances you used to only see in aerospace machining. As Tim Gillingham says, if your arrow doesn't bend right, your broadhead doesn't matter. That's why spine indexing, weight consistency, and insert alignment have become standard parts of any serious setup. Crossbows, too, have exploded in popularity and capability. Back in the day, Randy said crossbows were growing fast, and boy was he right. Today, bows like the Raven R500 are breaking 505 feet per second, with reverse draw systems and silent crank cockers. Crossbows aren't just for older hunters anymore. They're for anyone looking to extend their season and sharpen their edge. And then there's smart tech. Garmin's Zero Sight lets you range and pin your target in one motion. You've got bow-mounted devices, mobile tuning apps, and even digital release timers. If you're not into this stuff, don't worry. The fundamentals still matter most, but if you are, the tools are incredible. And we're seeing it all over the place. Chris B. pulling groups at 100 yards and showing his tuning process step by step. Cameron Haynes pushing the limits of distance, accuracy, and fitness with each backcountry hunt. Levi Morgan, arguably the greatest tournament archer alive, showing just how tight your bow can shoot with the right tune and form. But for all that advancement, one thing still holds true. You need someone who knows what they're doing, someone who can listen to you, watch your shot, press your bow, and feel where it's off. And that's Randy. Today, he's still at Morse's Sporting Goods, still tuning bows with the same precision. But now he's also added taxidermy to the mix. That means the same hands that help you take the shot are now helping you preserve the memory. That's full circle bow hunting. So whether this is your first episode or you've been with us since the early days, welcome. This is the beginning of a whole new chapter. Let's roll it back to 2013 to one of the interviews that helped shape the foundation of this podcast. This is episode 15 with Randy Gagne, master bow tech, hunter, and storyteller. You're listening to the Big Buck Registry's Evergreen Series. Randy is a bow technician that is sought out from all parts of New England, and he's agreed to sit down with us for an hour to talk to us about everything we ever wanted to know about bows and prep and everything that goes into making sure our bows are operating correctly. So, Randy, thank you and for joining us.
Glad to be here.
All right, man. We have a slew of questions. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right.
Fire away.
Let's get into a little bit about you. Where are you from, Randy?
I am originally from Concord, New Hampshire.
Okay.
Lived here my whole life.
Excellent. And how'd you get into bow tech work?
I actually, when I was in high school, started shooting competitively, and a new shop opened up in town, and I started working there part-time while I was in high school.
Nice.
And from there, went to a few tech schools, went to Hoyt School, PSC School, Matthews, so I've been to them all.
Oh, no kidding.
But that was 19 years ago. Been doing it ever since.
You don't look like you're that old.
I'm
really
not that old.
You're wearing a Matthews solo cam shirt.
Mm-hmm. I'm not biased.
You're not biased. All right. You work on all kinds of different bows at the shop, right?
I do. I work on all makes and models. Yeah.
Gotcha. It turns out you're my neighbor, right?
Yes. Yes, I am. Very close neighbor.
You live across the road, which
that's a heck of a neighbor to have.
It really is. It makes this real convenient.
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
Yep. So what should we know about just buying a bow in general right now?
The big thing is the technology's changed a lot as far as how the bows are designed. They're now called parallel limbs, which basically means the limbs are built more like a rectangle. So your limb tips move up and down instead of forward.
Mm-hmm.
So there's hardly any vibration in the bows these days. So they're a lot quieter. But, the big thing is if you buy a bow, it's got to fit you. In order for it to work properly, it's got to be fit to you.
Gotcha.
It's like buying golf clubs and stuff like that. It's got to be fit to you.
Gotcha. I've heard rumors from your coworkers and some friends of yours that people seek you out from all over New England, as far away as Maine, Connecticut, Massachusetts.
That's true.
What are you doing different or how do you draw that much of a clientele?
I've had the same customers for close to 19 years, and word of mouth. If you treat people right, that makes a difference. But you also have to know what you're doing, and it's there used to be an archery shop on every corner, but now there's a handful. So it's there's not a lot of people with the knowledge out there, to put these things together right.
Yep.
So I think that's a big part of it. But that, we're all hunters. We all treat people, good. So that's the important thing.
Now, I've gone into your shop, which is Morse Sporting Goods, owned by Jim Morse, correct?
Yep.
And usually I can't see it because you're like buried in bows, hanging across the top of the ceiling, and you're behind the workshop there. And I can see you kind of running around back there. Usually I have to go and grab you from behind the.
Yeah, it's my own little jail cell. Yep.
Yeah, and it's a jail cell of bars that are made from bows. Yep. Kind of cool. How's that for excitement, Dusty?
That's exciting. That's for sure.
It's pretty cool, huh? Dusty, what kind of questions do you have for Randy?
Ray, we're going to try to kind of start it off. Say you've got your bow put up for the season, and we're back in the bow season. Let's say April, May. You decide you're going to get your bow out. Is there any preparation?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to make sure you've got some wax on your strings. Make sure that you oil your nuts and bolts too before you put it away, especially if you're going to put it in a garage or a basement. I mean, the bows are built for moisture. It's not going to hurt them, but your screws and everything will definitely rust if you leave them unoiled.
Is there like condensation that plays a major part in anything that's got like metal bolts or that's a thing that coming from a master bow tech that that we want to cover that just for somebody that's going to put one away or get one out. You got to make sure you go through the proper techniques to store it and get it out and get it ready to shoot.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is definitely lube those bolts, because if you ever want to change any accessories on your bow, and those are, I call it nature's Loctite, if they're rusted in there, I can't get them out without stripping the bolts, and then I'd have to use a drill press and get the bolts out. So if you need to change something, you definitely want to have your bolts lubed. Check your strings over, because if you get 2 or 3 years out of a string and cable system, you're doing pretty well, especially if you shoot a lot.
Yeah, at that point, it's time to go ahead and to get either new put on,
even if it
or right on. Yeah, 2 or 3 years, that's what you're calling to be plenty for a life at a bowstring.
Absolutely, because you don't know what's going on underneath the servings. There's areas that are served over on that string, and you can't see what goes on underneath there.
Excellent.
So you want to check that out.
I'm a bad boy here, Randy. I bought a bow in around 1995.
Oh boy.
Yep. It's a Matthews MQ32.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yep.
It's an oldie but goodie, right?
Bow. Yeah.
To me, it's still brand new.
Yep.
I haven't had anything changed on it at all. I still shoot it fairly routinely.
Yep.
But I really have not done much maintenance except my basic maintenance that I would do. And that I don't think I've oiled it much. So and I'm going to just assume that there are a lot of guys out there like me.
There's a ton. Yeah.
Yeah.
The majority, actually. Yeah.
That's what I would expect. Yep. What should a guy like me do right now to make sure that my hunting season this year is successful?
Well, bring it so I can look at it. That's the big thing, because over the years, 10 years ago, everything had nylon bushings. There was no wheel bearings, tool bearings, or anything like that in the cams. Now we have that. So your nylon bushings in your cams could be shot.
Okay.
Which will rob you of accuracy. Right. So in strings and cables, if it's that old and those are original strings and cables, it might need them.
Okay.
Even though everything looks good, those strings and cables will stretch, and it will change the whole geometry of your bow without you even knowing it.
No kidding.
Yep. And it won't shoot like it should.
Wow. That explains why things aren't hitting the target.
Well, if your bow's a 60-pound max, say,
yep.
After 10 years, if you don't change strings and cables, it might be down to 56 pounds.
Yep.
Yeah, without even knowing it.
So after we're done here, before you head home, could I give that to you and take it to the shop, and then I'll pick it up?
I would recommend that you do.
Okay. All right. Good. All right.
Okay, let's back up here. Tell us how old this bow is.
1996 is when I bought it.
96, and you've just done some maintenance or no maintenance?
Some of my own maintenance, yes.
Okay.
Very minimal, not anything up to the level that Randy would just, he'd like blow it off as something he could do in his sleep.
Just to let you know, I sold those bows in high school in 1996. I was in high school, or just getting out of high school. Sorry.
All right, Randy. All right, I got to tell you. Tell Jay that he's got to get his boat looked at. Bottom line.
Definitely needs a tune-up.
See, he's not leaving my house till I give him my bow. Basically,
absolutely.
Well, what other questions do you have, Dusty?
Going in for a bow say I'm a first time hunter. I'm coming into the shop and I run into you, Randy. Tell me what you're going to tell a new hunter on what they should purchase to get started. As far as draw length, how do you determine that and poundage that's manageable for somebody to pull?
Yep.
How do you go about doing that?
Very first thing we do is we find your dominant eye, because you have to set a bow up according to your dominant eye. You might do everything right-handed, but be left-eye dominant. And if that's the case, you get a left-handed bow. The reason for that is that way you can shoot with both eyes open and not restrict yourself to having, one eye shut. And then we figure out, your draw length, which the quickest and easiest way to do that is you divide your wingspan by 2.5. And that gets us very close to what your draw length would be, and then we fine-tune it from there. As far as the poundage goes, everybody's different. I've seen very large guys, that can't pull 50, 55 pounds, and I've seen just the opposite. It's all in the person. So these days, a 50 to 60-pound bow is all you'll ever need, depending on what you're going to, go hunting for. So
Excellent.
Gotcha. All right. So let's talk a little bit. Randy was kind enough to put together some questions that he receives in the shop every day for the most part. One of which was, how do I figure out my draw length, which is what Dusty just asked. One of the things, let's go down through some of these questions here. What broadhead should I use, the fixed or the expandable?
This is a big one. I hear this every day.
Okay.
A lot of it is personal preference, and you're going to hear, horror stories on both, unfortunately. But the big thing with an expandable head is that they retract. So they're in flight, they're closed. When they hit the animal, they open up. So they fly exactly like your practice points do. So once you're all dialed in with your practice points, you can screw these tips on and go hunting without having to shoot them.
Okay.
A fixed blade head, not the same. You're putting wings on the front of your arrow. So those actually have to be tuned to your arrow. There's some performance differences there. There's nothing better for penetration than a fixed blade broadhead. Okay. And they continuously cut while they're in the game. But there's some tuning involved with them. So generally, you can't just screw those on and go hit the same point of impact. Sometimes you luck out and you can, but normally that's not the case.
Let's expand upon that a little bit. So if you've got a fixed broadhead, you have to tune the broadhead to the arrow itself.
Yes, and some people think that that's just lining up the feathers to your blades or opposite or whatever. That's not the case. Your inserts are put into your arrow at the pro shop or wherever. If they're not machined properly or not put in straight, which can happen, then that broadhead is basically on the arrow crooked. So it's going to go the direction that it's pointed. If you take your arrow with a broadhead on it and you spin it on end on a glass table or whatever, you'll be able to see that wobble. If that wobbles, it's not going to fly. So, a lot of times you might get a dozen arrows and only have 4 or 5 that are good and straight that'll fly good.
So it has to be a precision instrument.
Yeah, what we do is somebody will order some arrows from us. We install the broadheads so that they do line up with your vanes, but we also put the inserts in straight and make sure that they spin to tolerance so that they fly good. That way, every arrow you pull out of your quiver is the same.
So how many arrows should you have in your quiver if you're out?
It all depends. Yep. In New Hampshire, it's you could have one that would last you all season, but a place like Ohio, 4 arrow is the norm now. Yep. It used to be 8, but now smaller, lighter quivers are the norm. So
gotcha.
4 to 6. That would be plenty.
Dusty, how many do you carry in your quiver?
I carry 4.
4. Okay. That's about what I've got as well.
Are these aluminum 1992s?
No, I've actually bought new arrows. I made my own arrows. They still shoot. I'm sure that they're not precision because I've got to do the tabletop test. Some of them might be wobbly, but I'm at least smart enough to do that.
Yep, that's good.
Yeah. So I think they're not 1992. Those are long gone, Dusty. But thanks for asking.
I had to ask. The bow hasn't had no tuning. I just make sure the arrows were up to date.
Yeah, no, they're fairly new. In fact, I don't think I can even get the arrows that I originally started with.
They probably don't make them anymore. They phased out of a lot.
I started with some aluminum arrows. Well, I'm still with aluminum arrows, but I started with a different version than I have today. And the chart that I used to use, they don't even make the ones that came with the bow way back when. Let's see. How much weight do I need to pull?
You kind of have to tailor that to the game you're hunting. Generally for deer, turkey, antelope, that size animal, 50 to 60 pounds is sufficient. But if you're going after elk or moose or something like that, a lot of that depends on your draw length and everything too. But some people choose to shoot a little bit more. The big thing is if you've got good broadheads, good arrows, and good arrow flight, you should be okay with 60, 62 pounds, somewhere in that neighborhood. But it's a little bit personal preference. But if you tailor your equipment to what you're hunting, and talk to if you have a pro shop that you deal with, ask the people behind the counter. If you're going on an elk hunt, ask them. They'll set you up right.
What's the normal draw length or draw weight on a recurve bow? I mean, you're a compound guy, right?
No, I sell a fair amount of recurves.
You do?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Less than you would think. Those are measured at 28-inch draw. So if the bow is stamped 50 pounds, it's going to get that at 28 inches. If you pull 30, you're gaining weight. So, that 50-pound bow could be 56, 57. It stacks up a lot. But generally, 45 is the most common that we sell.
Okay. And that's lighter than what you'd have on a compound.
It is, but it's all the way. It stacks all the way. There's no let off halfway through.
Right.
So you're holding that entire weight.
Right. And that's the whole beauty of a compound bow is that you have a let off, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, 80%.
Yeah. When was the compound bow invented? Any idea?
You started seeing them, I believe, in the late 60s, early 70s. Got very popular in the 80s.
Right.
In early 90s, the technology just started to go crazy from there.
Was it Fred Bear?
Bear was huge. Jennings.
Yeah.
Stemler. I mean, there's some oldies out there. And I still see bows that are 35 years old.
Is that right?
Yep. And guys hunt with them and they do okay with them.
I think the first compound bow I ever had was I think it was a Bear, but it was purchased out of a Sears catalog.
Absolutely, yep.
Yep, and that's what I shot when I was, me and my friend Bruce, actually.
Yep.
We both bought the same ones and we'd shoot. It was, by today's standards, probably one of the junkiest compound bows you could possibly get, but it's actually still at my parents' house.
Yep.
Still shoots. I could never hit anything with it.
That's the thing, the accuracy difference. Yep. I mean, there's some serious technology in the bows these days. Yep. They've come a long ways, even since I've been doing this. So I've seen it.
Yep. Dusty, what else you got?
Hey, you guys talking about poundage on your bow. Tell us a little more about that, if you would, Randy, as far as how do you go about adjusting the poundage on a compound?
Most of your bows are adjustable in 10-pound increments. They'll go 50 to 60 pounds, 60 to 70 pounds, but it's all determined by the limb bolts, and that's the bolts that hold your limbs at the base. You basically turn those in or out, and that preloads your limbs more or less, and that changes the weight. Most of your pro shops have a scale on the wall, and we pull it down to the peak weight, and then we'll continue to pull it until it lets off, and we'll be able to tell you what your holding weight is. It's usually 80% less or 70% less than what the peak is.
Excellent. Whatever. Okay, let me go with this. When you figure out, once you set up with a poundage, is there a proper arrow to match up with your poundage, or is that just based off of any, let's say, carbon fiber arrow? Can you shoot pretty much anything once you get it tuned in?
No. I mean, that you have to run the proper spined arrow, and we basically take the length of your arrow and the poundage that you're shooting, and puts us onto a crossover chart, depending on what brand arrow you get, and that gives us the proper spine arrow, and every arrow flexes, and your stiffer spined arrows, your stiffer arrows are designed for higher weight, and then vice versa, your weaker ones for weaker weight. But arrows are designed to flex. They're not designed to be stiff right out of the bow. So aluminum, there's 100 different sizes, but carbon, there's actually only a handful. And if you don't have the right spined arrow, you'll never get peak performance out of your bow. So it's pretty important to have that determined right too.
So what you're saying is, if you're going in to buy arrows for your bow, you probably should have your bow with you and try to get the proper arrows to fit your setup.
Yep, definitely. And even some of your arrow rests are designed for certain diameter arrows too. So you definitely need to have your bow with you when you go in to do that process.
Excellent. Yeah, I see. There's a ton of guys go out and walk into, let's say, Dick's Sporting Goods and buy a pack of arrows.
Yeah, it'll shoot them, but the other thing is you don't want to get too light of an arrow for your bow, and you don't want to be having the wrong length arrow either. So you definitely want to be set up right when it comes to arrows. They need to be cut to your length. I mean, it's a custom thing.
Absolutely.
I think I'm going to be a good test case for Randy.
We'll see.
I want to get a full rundown of all the things I was doing wrong, so I can figure out what to do right.
We can do that.
We may need a report back on this, Randy.
We can do that.
A report card.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there we go.
A, B, C, D, and F.
We're probably in pretty good shape.
Right.
But we'll just double check it and make sure everything's safe.
Here's the interesting thing is that bow that I have had, I've killed quite a few deer with it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting. So it might be I might have done a lot of things wrong, but it still shoots deer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got customers, like I said, I see bows that are 35 years old, and those guys are the first ones at the deer check station every year. So it's not a matter of that. Every bow will shoot. The difference is the technology, less vibration, all that stuff. So
yeah, and I suppose there's still this whole element of being a good hunter.
Oh yeah,
the weapon is a variable, but not as much as being the hunter.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
You talked about rests, right? Mm-hmm. Let's talk about rests a little bit more. A whisker biscuit. Mm-hmm. What's your opinion on that?
One of my biggest selling arrow rests, whisker biscuits and dropaways. One's full containment, full contact, and the other one is no contact. So there's a big contrast there. And I've seen people shoot whisker biscuits as well as people do with dropaways. The big thing is that the arrows need to be set up for a whisker biscuit rest. You can't run like a helical feather fletch through a whisker biscuit. There's too much drag there. It's not going to be accurate. But they actually design small fletching that cuts through those pretty good. And they do make different diameters for different diameter arrows, so they're okay. I don't have any issues with them. Dropaways are more accurately just inherent. I mean, they're going to be more accurate because there's no contact there. So
gotcha. What's the degree of error between the two? Like if you've got, let's make it just a simple chart. If the drop away is a 10, what a whisker biscuit is a 8, 7,
probably a 6 or 7.
6 or 7.
Yeah.
That much difference.
There is. And mostly in forgiveness. If you have a bad hand position or torque the bow at all, it forces your vanes or your fletching harder into that arrow rest because it's full contact than a drop away. With a drop away rest, your arrow rest drops before the fletching gets to the arrow rest. So if you have a bad shot, you're not throwing your fletching harder into your arrow rest.
Okay.
So there's less contact there.
Gotcha. Dusty, what kind of rest are you using?
Whisker biscuit.
Mm-hmm. You're doing a whisker biscuit. Okay.
Yep. Whisker biscuit. That's what I like. And I've shot it for a good while. That's where I'm at with it.
Okay. Like I said, I've seen guys shoot them great. So I have no issues with it at all.
Gotcha. I was just amazed that there is a variation between that and a drop away though. I wouldn't have thought that, but it's interesting. Okay. What's the effective range of my bow?
That's mostly determined by the shooter, and I get that question a lot too. I basically tell people an 8-inch diameter circle, you need to be able to keep all your arrows in that, and that's your effective range. Now, some people can do that at 60, 70 yards. But, generally, 30, 40 yards, if you can keep that in there, in that 8-inch diameter, every arrow, then that's your effective range. Yes, we can shoot 50, 60, 70 yards, but there's still that lag time from when you squeeze the trigger to when the arrow gets there, that animal can move a couple of steps. So, that even though you're hitting where you're aiming, that object isn't there anymore, or it's moved. So ethically, that's up to the hunter. But I generally, if you really want to know, what your effective range is, that 8-inch rule usually.
Okay.
That's the kill zone on an animal. Yeah. So
one of the things we talked about last week, Dusty, is practice. How often should somebody practice?
It depends. A lot of people will store it under their bed until 3 weeks before the season. And the way the bows are designed these days, you can get away with that. Mm-hmm. But the people that really, really shoot well, they pick it up every couple of weeks, and just shoot in the backyard or whatever. But you want to stay on top of it.
When you were doing competitive shooting, how often did you shoot?
Every day.
Every day.
Yeah, you had to be competitive, and you still have to.
Yeah. Kind of like golf, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Yep.
You don't want to.
It's a lot like golf.
You might get up and have a couple of good shots right away, but by the end of the round, you're all over the place.
Yep. It's very much like golf.
Yep. Interesting. Dusty, what else you got?
Well, on a percentage scale, the old recurves, human error plays a major factor in that. How did the compound bow take away the factor of human error on a percentage scale? Say a compound bow is 50% likely to pick up human error. Is there a percentage you can give us, Randy, that would tell us how much a compound bow compensates for human error?
It's hard to say, but you could still make a mistake, probably 75%, I suppose.
So it compensates 75%, that much.
Because you have reference points. I always tell people, think of it in rifle terms. You got a front sight and a rear sight on a rifle, and with a compound bow, you've got a peep sight in the string, which is like your rear sight, and then a front sight on the bow. So if you were shooting your rifle without that rear sight, you have no sight plane, and it's definitely not as accurate. So the more reference points you have, the more accurate you're going to be.
Right on. Is there any kind of add-ons that somebody can do to their bow without taking it into a shop that would help them shoot a little more accurate, a little more squared up? There's something that you can recommend that they can do on their own?
Stabilizers are probably the big thing. A lot of people don't put stabilizers on their bow because they don't want to deal with the weight, the added weight to their bows, but they help out a lot. They take some vibration out of the bow, but they help to balance the bow out. So you want your bow to go straight forward towards the target after the shot, and with the right stabilizer, that would do that. So those tighten up your groups a lot.
Yeah, stabilizer definitely levels out the bow in your hand. That's for sure.
Yep, for sure.
All right, tell me about a dry fire. It's a bad subject. I don't like to hear it.
That's bad news. I had a few of those.
It's real bad. Tell me what happens when somebody accidentally, or it happens. It's going to happen. There's no way around it. It happens. Everybody makes a mistake.
Yep.
Tell us what happens when a dry fire occurs.
The bow is designed to have the weight of that arrow. When it doesn't have the weight of that arrow, it's dry fired, obviously. And a number of things can happen. The way the bows are these days, all the cams and everything are very skeletonized. So, I mean, you could potentially rip the side out of your cam. I mean, definitely strings and cables are going to break. Not always, but generally that's the rule. Axles that hold your cams in, they'll bend. It's not a good thing to do. It's not.
Yeah, for sure. Not good at all.
So how do you prevent a dry fire? You just don't pull it back unless you've got something
I'll tell you,
knocked up?
The biggest reason why bows are dry fired is because their buddies want to pull it back. I tell people, don't let your buddies pull back. It's your bow. And don't pull it back unless you have an arrow in it and you're going to shoot at a target. There's really no reason to pull your bow back without an arrow in it. It's just asking for bad news. And now we actually lock most of the bows on the rack, not because we don't want people pulling them back, but it's embarrassing for people when it happens. So, we go through all the safety stuff before they actually have the bow in their hand, so that doesn't happen. And I suggest that people lock their strings, at home too. That way there's no chance of somebody just picking it up and letting it go.
Right.
They sell, just little plastic locks that go on there and they come off real easy, and it prevents that whole issue because it always happens at the worst time, middle of the season.
Oh, it seems like it's a week before season. You're out shooting with your buddies,
Yep.
And next thing you know, you're in a dry fire situation where you've got a trash bow.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, most of it is fixable. So, but it's still, you get all tuned in with your bow, and then that happens. It's a downer.
What happens to me a lot is either my kids want to try to pull it, and they're not strong enough to pull it all the way back.
Yeah.
But it still must do some tension on the string itself. It can't be.
Well, the worst thing is if they did get it back and couldn't get it down.
Right.
That's normally what happens.
Right. What my biggest problem is that I'm one of the few hunters in my circle of friends that I went to like school with and things like that. Like I was kind of like the anomaly.
Yep.
But boy, you put a bow in front of one of those guys, like, oh my God, a bow.
Yep.
I always wanted to pull one back.
All about it.
So what do?
Mm-hmm.
They walk right over to it. First thing, it slips straight out of the hand.
Yep.
You got that whole thing going on.
Perfect, for the lock, because then you can explain to them before they even grab the bow, what the deal is with it.
Yeah. So these days, what I do is I don't put the bow within sight if I'm having a party or inviting someone over.
Hide it in the closet.
I hide it. I move my four-wheeler up the road to my friend's house.
Yeah.
So nothing comes back broken.
There you go. That's a good plan. I like that.
That is a good plan.
Yep, that's the only way I know how to get by it. All right, let's talk a little bit about arrows. Carbon or aluminum. Those are the two big advances, or the carbon's been the big advance in the last 10 years, right?
Yep.
Because I think when I first started getting serious about shooting for hunting, it was all aluminum, and the carbons just came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The carbons, 15 years ago left a lot to be desired. They had seams in them. So if they broke in an animal, there would be splinters to deal with and all that. But now they're a cross weave design. So if they do break, they break clean. They're very safe. And the price was a big thing back then too. They were very expensive, but now aluminum and carbon, they're on even, as far as the price goes. So the big advantage is you could shoot less weight and get more speed.
Right.
And if you actually do the math with kinetic energy, you're not losing anything because you're gaining so much speed with that carbon arrow. And it flattens out your trajectory. If you're off from your distance 5 yards, you're still a kill shot. Where if you're slower with an aluminum arrow, you're going to be right on with your distance judging.
Gotcha. So the price point on the carbons have come down
A lot.
to the point where they're the same price point. They're shorter in general. Is that correct?
Shorter in length?
Yep.
Not
No.
necessarily.
No. Okay.
Nope. Same length, just lighter in construction.
Gotcha.
Most of them are around 7 grains per inch, where an aluminum arrow will be 11, 12 grains per inch.
Gotcha.
Big weight difference there.
Thinner?
Thinner in diameter,
Okay.
but the same wall thickness as aluminum.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So are they hollow like aluminum?
Yep, they are hollow. Yep.
Gotcha. See, I don't shoot carbons. I'm still stuck in 1996
Yep.
with my aluminum. So I'm thinking, I don't know much about carbons, although I've had friends that were shooting them.
Yeah, they're a lot of people shot overdraws, and stuff like that back then too.
Right. That was the other thing. Overdraws. Saw a lot of those.
Those are gone now, and the reason why they came out with overdraws was to shoot a lighter arrow to get the weight down on the arrow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you can accomplish that with a full length arrow with a carbon. So you're accomplishing the same thing without having to do that.
Gotcha. Dusty, what are you shooting?
Carbon.
Okay.
Carbon fiber. Okay, let me ask you this, Randy, while we got you in the arrow mode.
Yep.
What's the difference in knockdown in carbon than aluminum?
If
As far as when the impact hits.
Yeah, if you do the math, and you take an arrow that weighs 350 grains and get it shooting 280, 290 feet per second, and then say you've got an aluminum arrow that's 500 grains, but it's only shooting 220. If you do the kinetic energy math, they're going to be within a pound or two of each other, and you might even gain more, with a carbon arrow. The thing is, arrows, they're not designed to knock down. You're never going to have the kind of kinetic energy that you have, with a bullet. They're designed to kill by cutting. Maximum you might get 60, 70 foot-pounds of energy, which is nowhere near, what a bullet would be. So, they kill by clean cuts.
Excellent. Talk about fletchings.
Yeah,
differences.
That's
there's a lot of different fletchings out there.
There is. Over the past couple of years, everything has gone smaller. The majority of veins now are about 2 inches, where 5 or 6 years ago there were 4 or 5, in that neighborhood. What they've done is they've changed the materials and the profile of the fletching. They're a little bit higher profile, but a stiffer material. So they actually steer the arrow as good, if not better, than a softer 4-inch vein would. The reason why they can use that stiffer material is because of the drop-away rests and the whisker biscuit style rests, because they cut
right on
there. So the arrow rest designs have kind of tailored to be able to use those smaller veins.
Right on. Jay, what's the next question you got for Randy?
All right, this is a good one. I love this question because this kind of sits home with everybody. It's about dollar price.
Yeah.
What's the difference between $1,000 bow and a $300 bow?
We get that a lot too. Mostly it's in materials and workmanship. If you say your top of the line, Hoyt model bow, it's going to have a carbon fiber riser, all tubular carbon, just like a bicycle frame would have. So there's a lot of workmanship in that riser. And then your lower end bows are going to have what's called a cast riser. And then your medium range bows will have a machined riser, where it's taken out of a solid piece of aluminum and machine cut. Performance wise, there's not a huge difference between the three of them, but quality rise and tolerance and all that, there's a big difference there. Carbon's very light, and it's very stiff, and it stays warm when it's cold out. Your aluminum has been around for, a long time. That's kind of the norm, the machined aluminum riser. But you're going to have differences in how they're designed as far as what they have for vibration reduction stuff on them too. There's a difference. You won't necessarily see it sitting on the rack, but you'll feel it when you shoot it. When you shoot a $300 bow versus a $1,000 bow, you're going to feel some difference there.
Yep. I know when I went from my bear, and then actually I went from a bear to I bought a used Darton off of my buddy. Mm-hmm. And I was impressed because he could hit the bullseye and I couldn't.
Yeah.
No matter how hard I try.
Yep.
And that was the bear I bought out of the Sears catalog.
Yep.
The bears today, I'm sure, blow that away.
Oh, yeah.
That was like a $50 bow.
Yep.
Back in 1985 or something like that,
yep.
Right? Then the bow that I'm shooting today, the MQ-32, was at that time, I think I paid about $1,000.
Yeah.
Thereabouts.
Yep.
And it was night and day.
Yes.
Even from the Darton, which I thought was pretty good at that time.
And you probably had that bow set up for you.
Absolutely, I did.
Yeah, that makes a big difference too. You never had the Darton set up for you.
Right.
It was set up for who had it previously.
Yep.
And that goes back to, having it set for you, you're going to shoot it better.
Yep. This was the first bow that I bought that didn't come off the rack. I mean, this thing was designed for me.
Yep.
Made for me. And I was shooting accurately from day one.
Mm-hmm. There was a big difference there.
Yep. Huge difference. We talked a little bit about fletchings and vanes, and one of the questions that you wrote down for me was, what's the advantage of the new small vanes? Tell me about that.
The big advantage is again, it's weight and trajectory. There's less drag there. So again, you're going to gain some speed, which means you can be off on your distance judging a little bit more even. So it's all just trying to make the bows more forgiving for human error.
Okay.
And it does that.
Gotcha. Dusty, what else you got?
From a master bow technician, today, Randy, if you was walking in to buy a brand new bow, knowing what you know, what's your choice on putting behind your shot? What are you buying today? If you went to buy one today, what's the best out there?
There's a lot of good bows. They're all good.
We want the absolute best you can buy,
Yep.
the best shooting, smoothest, the most bang for your buck.
Yep.
Money, no object.
No object.
Yeah.
Okay.
I shoot a carbon element from Hoyt. It's a whole different level bow. There's the machine riser bows that are out there, and they're great. They're awesome bows, but this thing is a totally different machine. It's the lightest, most balanced thing out there. It's pretty impressive.
Is it a fairly new bow?
It's the design has been out for 3 or 4 years, but they've done little refinements to it every year.
Right.
And the new model comes out in a couple weeks. So yeah, it's quite a rig.
It seems to me that every bow company goes through this metamorphosis, and every year they've got to put out a new bow, or every 2 years.
Yeah.
Why is that? Is it just to keep up with the Joneses, or is there actually something that's improving in the marketplace to help the hunter?
I mean, they have to sell bows. So it's,
Okay.
they want to come out with new technology every year so that people, buy bows every year.
Right.
But the thing is, the technology is, you can feel it. I mean, you can see it. So they're making leaps and bounds almost every year on technology.
Yep.
I mean, these bows now, they do not vibrate. There's no shock. It's, they're very impressive. And that's all the way through the line, whether it's a $300 bow or a $1,000 bow.
Gotcha. Is there
Is that
Go ahead, Dusty. Go ahead.
say a bow manufacturer? Have you noticed? You're working on them all the time. Does every bow that come in pretty much have the same exact setup and the same exact the machining? Is it all the same, or is there some things that you've noticed on different bows that have to tweak a little bit with different each bow you get your hands on?
Yeah, I mean, I work on any make and model, so I see them all. As far as how they operate, they're all pretty close to the same. But, materials, workmanship, stuff like that, technology in them, they're all a little bit different.
Oh, excellent.
What about resale value on old bows? Is there a market for them, or is it? I know you sell used bows.
Yeah.
How is the market? Is it desirable? Is there a demand for it?
It is. And we kind of have a cutoff. If the bow's 3 or 4 years old, we usually don't take it in. But, 3 or 4 year old technology is still pretty good technology. And that way we know the bow's in good shape too, if it's not too old. But absolutely, there's a market for used bows.
Gotcha.
Yep. And we do a fair amount with it.
If you have the financial wherewithal, should you look at changing out your bow every 4 years?
It depends how heavy you are into it. If you're serious into it and you want to keep the value of your bow, don't let it get too old, because that's the big thing. 4 or 5 years, and then they lose their value a lot.
Gotcha. So that's like driving the car off the lot, so to speak.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years.
If you don't care and you're happy with your bow, then great. Shoot it and it'll do everything you want it to do. Bows are designed to last. They're way overbuilt these days. They're not going to break. I mean, unless something adverse happens, but they're built very well.
Gotcha. Okay. Dusty, you got any more questions?
Let's talk about the pins, the sight pins. Let's get into that a little bit. That was a question Randy wrote down for us to ask. A single pin or a 3-pin.
Yep.
What do you recommend for somebody to be shooting?
It depends on your eyesight, for one thing. Some hunters don't have great eyesight. So if you get a really fast bow and you got multiple pins on there, I mean, your pins are so close together that they all look like one anyways. So it's really hard to decipher between your pins. So a lot of people will go the single pin adjustable sight. And they're huge out west, where you could be shooting 60, 70 yards, antelope or something like that, or mule deer. That's pretty common practice out there. So by having that single pin, you can range find the animal. If it's 34 yards, you set it for 34 yards and you aim dead on. Where with a multiple pin sight, you're, going in between pins. Around here, it's thick country. 20, 30 yards is usually where your shots are going to be. Most people prefer a multiple pin sight.
Right.
I know I have, I think I'm shooting 3 pins. When I interviewed Rob Lucas from Chasing Tail, he said that, I forget what he's shooting, but I know those guys all bow hunt down there. There's no guns.
Yep.
Because they're hunting in such a tight quarter populated community.
Yep.
The guy, I think it was John Bassett, he shoots one pin.
Mhm.
That's it. I think Arky did too.
Yeah.
It seems like some of the old timers, just one pin, that's it.
The bows are fast enough now. You can get away almost to 30 yards with one pin anyhow.
Okay.
You just learn to compensate a little bit. But they're pretty flat shooting, so you can definitely do something like that.
So the 10-yard shot was going to be the same as the 30-yard shot.
Pretty close. Yeah.
Okay.
Within a couple inches. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And you learn to compensate just by shooting your bow and learning the trajectory of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How important is it to hit a 3D archery range? I know you guys have a good range over there at Morse's.
Best practice you can have.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're three-dimensional targets, real-life targets versus, having a square bail, and it teaches you to judge distance. That's the biggest thing with bow hunting is learning to judge distance. I mean, if you can't tell where that target's 20 or 33 yards, or that's a miss. So yeah, that's a huge thing.
Is that the best thing you can do as a bow hunter?
It's one of the best. Yep.
Okay. Because I know, like in baseball, they say that one of the best things you can do to hit is just to hit off of a tee,
Mhm.
one of those rubber tees.
Yep.
In golf, I'm not quite sure what the best thing to do in golf is. Probably just to go out and hit some balls at the range. So you're saying that just getting out there to a range that'll give you that live
Real life
3D
conditions. Yep.
conditions is one of the best things you can do.
I mean, you can shoot all day in your backyard, but you don't have, some people have pretty elaborate, ranges in their backyard, but if you don't have the terrain and stuff like that, it doesn't teach you to judge distance in those situations. Shooting uphill, stuff like that, it makes a big difference.
What about stump hunting? Like if you go out and just...
People still do it. It's a little hard on your arrows these days because the bows are so fast. Your recurve people, they do it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's the same idea as shooting 3D.
Okay. Seems like you're going to destroy your arrow a lot, right?
You are, yeah. And the arrows aren't cheap these days.
Right.
I mean,
You're probably not going to reload the same arrow once you hit a stump.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Right.
No.
That brings up an interesting point, Dusty, too, and Randy. If you put a bad arrow in your bow, is that going to screw up your bow?
It could screw you up.
It could.
Yeah, carbon arrows, that's the one thing you definitely need to pay attention to. And there's warning labels right on the arrows. If you group your arrows together and you're smashing your arrows and they're making contact, you need to check them to make sure that they're not splintered. The easiest way to do it is you just flex your arrow and you'll hear it or see it crack or anything like that. If it does, if you see splinters or little cracks on each end or whatever, they're no good.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. So there's actually some safety items involved here. There's always safety involved in anything to do with...
You have it with aluminum arrows too. Thin walls, aluminum arrows, same thing. They can break. If anybody ever sees slow motion video of a bow being shot, the whole thing looks like a piece of spaghetti.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
unbelievable flex.
And your arrow looks like a piece of spaghetti. So, any faults in that arrow, it's gonna get magnified.
Yeah, that high-speed camera really
Yep.
slows it down and you can see it.
It's not worth it for the price of the arrow.
It's insane.
Yep.
Oh, you're right.
Have you guys seen the photo of the arrow sticking through the hand?
I'll be honest with you, that's a customer of mine.
Oh God.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, he came in a few weeks ago, and that was a situation where he was given an arrow that was too short for his bow.
Oh wow.
And didn't realize it, and it had fallen off the shelf and landed on his hand, and when he fired it, it went through. That's something, it shouldn't happen, but it did.
Wow.
And that's all stuff. It's stuff that you gotta learn as a bow hunter, that
Right.
the arrows have to be right.
It's years ago, in New Hampshire, you didn't have to have hunter safety to get a license.
Yep.
In fact, they didn't change that until fairly recently. 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Probably closer to 10 at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
You didn't have to go through a course. Bow hunting or using a bow was just like, hey, you might as well just throw a stick at them.
Yep.
That's how they took it. That's how the safety was designed. But they've changed that whole thing. How's it like in Ohio, Dusty? Do you have to take courses and to get your bow license?
Yeah, I'm not 100% on that, Jay, but I think if you had your license prior years to the date that they set, you was available to purchase them over the counter again, if you can show previous record of having the license before the actual date. Nowadays they recommend a hunter safe course, and coming from us here on the Big Buck Registry, that's something that me and you, and I know Randy highly recommend to anybody, go, even the experienced hunter, go take a hunter safety course. It's simple, it's easy, it's a refresher for the people that's been doing it for a long time, and you're going to learn something. I'll guarantee it.
Oh yeah, you'll pick up something. Yeah, and even a veteran will pick up something.
Yep. Let's talk about broadheads a little bit more. We talked about the fixed heads and the what's the other expandable. Thank you. The expandables. So, do you need to like take care of your broadheads?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. What do I need to do to take care of a broadhead?
If you're shooting a fixed blade head and you shoot it into a target, any style foam target, those blades are dull. They're no longer should be used for hunting.
And that's a big point. That's a big point right there.
Yeah, because they have to be surgically razor sharp to ensure a good blood trail. So I keep them oiled when I put them away, for the season. But expandable heads, I keep them lubed up. And most expandables run on an O-ring, which can dry rot.
Right.
So you want to pay attention to that.
Yep. What do you use to treat them? Some kind of an oil?
Unscented gun oil, poppies, anything like that. It just keeps those blades from getting tarnished. Most of your broadheads have a chisel style tip on them. Those will rust if they get wet.
Right.
So if you keep a coat of that on there, it'll keep that from happening.
Yep.
They're not cheap. I mean, so if you take care of them, they'll last.
Yep.
I see that when somebody, this is going to be a good point. I think Randy will back me on this, is whenever you put your arrow in your quiver, it don't need to be sunk way down in there.
No.
That's a mistake that a lot of hunters make. They think that the arrow and the broadhead should be sunk way down the quiver for support. And really all you want is the tip in there and leave the blades exposed.
Yeah, because just pushing your blades in and out of that hood foam, it dulls them every time you do that.
That's correct.
Yep.
Wow. What type of brands are out there for broadheads these days?
Oh, there's a lot.
It seems like there's a catalog just grows and grows and grows.
There's a lot, and a lot of them are similar in design. But I mean, you've got cutting diameters on expandables up to 2.5, 2 3/4 inches.
Yeah.
Most of your fixed blades are inch and a quarter. But NAP makes good stuff. G5, Rage, that's a big one. There's a lot of good ones out there.
Muzzy's still good these days?
Muzzy's still good. They're kind of going through a change, to keep up with the times.
Mm-hmm.
Their designs have been the same for a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So they're, redoing that and coming out with some new stuff that'll be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I've heard a lot of things about Swacker.
Swackers are great too. Yeah, we sell a lot of those. That's a good broadhead.
How do you decide what the weight should be?
Generally, you've got 85 or 75 on the light end of the scale, 100 grain being the medium and the most popular, and then 125. 100 grain is by far the most popular. And usually, unless you have some sort of out of whack setup, 100 grain will work for you. And you have the most selection with broadheads with that.
Okay.
But, sometimes you need 125 grain tip to get your arrows to group well.
Right.
So most of the time, all the companies do is put some sort of weight collar on, the same broadhead and makes it 125.
Oh, that's it?
You don't gain anything as far as cutting diameters usually or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's just basically you're gaining 25 grains. Used to be the bigger the grain weight, the bigger the broadhead.
Yeah.
But it's not that way anymore.
Gotcha. Interesting. All right, let's talk about this other thing that you brought in. You said it's when you walked in, you said this is big. This is really big in the market right now, and it's a crossbow.
Yeah, crossbows are huge.
Yeah, let's talk about crossbows for a little while.
And I know in Ohio they're huge.
Yep. Dusty, you were talking about a crossbow, right?
Yeah, I gotta lay it down. I went to a crossbow, guys.
Mm-hmm.
You said you had a bad shoulder, and that pulling back a bow with your right shoulder was not going to really feel all that good anymore. So go ahead. You went to the crossbow from there, correct?
Yeah, I sure did. I actually went to a off-brand. I've tried something out of the ordinary. I'm hoping to shoot a monster chubby tines with it. I went with what's called a SA Sports Fever.
Mm-hmm.
It's a recurve.
Yep.
Now, Randy, why are crossbows becoming so popular?
Well, partly the hunting community is getting older.
Okay.
It's not just that, but they're a very effective tool. In New Hampshire, we utilize them for, down in the southern part of the state where quarters are tight. It's easier to get permission with a crossbow than it would be a firearm.
Right.
So they're legal here during the firearms season. But, in other states, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Ohio, they're legal during the regular bow hunting season.
Right.
So, if for some reason you've got an injury or it's just not comfortable for you to pull back a bow, you can still be out there. And we've got a lot of customers that are in their, early 70s, late 60s, and they can't pull a bow anymore. Right. But they still want to hunt. So it gets them out there. and that's what they're for.
Is it hard to pull back the string?
A lot of them have either a rope cocker, which takes 50% of that weight off just by mechanical advantage. They have rollers built in, or they've got a cocking device that's built right into the stock, and they crank up just like a winch. So no, not really.
Gotcha. So with the advent of the hunting community getting older, you must be starting to work on more crossbows than ever before.
We do. Yeah, we sell a lot more every year. It's our biggest growing thing.
No kidding.
Yes.
I know that my father-in-law, my wife's uncle, they've all gone to crossbows because they have one blew out his shoulder completely.
Yep.
The other one technically is handicapped and can't.
Yep.
And it seems like that's the advent of where bow hunting's going.
They'd be sitting on the couch if
Absolutely
they weren't giving that up.
These guys can't sit still
Yeah.
during hunting. They have to be outside.
And it gets them out there.
Yep. And good.
So, are you calling me old, Jay?
I wasn't calling you old, Dusty.
That's just it seems like the Cadillac of the hunting industry is going the crossbow, and that's crazy.
Yeah,
I would love to shoot a crossbow. I actually haven't yet. I know the technology is just light years from where it was.
I think a lot of people, sometimes they get a bad name from the bow hunting community, and it's better off that everybody stays together. But it's not that big of an advantage.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, there's always been a stigma that it was a cheating.
Yep.
You gave yourself an edge over the wildlife.
I mean, it's got to be, it's pulled back. It's all cocked back, but, it's still a bow just horizontal. So, I mean, you've got trajectory, everything else still applies.
Right. I would love to try a crossbow during hunting season, during rifle season. I think that would be a hoot.
Yep.
Otherwise, I still like my bow. Like, I think I'm better with my bow than I would be at a crossbow, but I'd still like to give it a shot.
But if you had an injury or a shoulder problem or something, and
In
it
a
kept
heartbeat.
You,
Fortunately, right now, I think technically I might be older than Dusty.
Yep.
But I'm not sure. But so far, nothing is broken.
Yeah.
Up on the upper shoulder. So
Too many years of hay baling, I think, for me.
that's true, Dusty. You've worked your shoulder pretty much. Do it hard.
It's at the point where it's either make the change or make a mistake with a big one.
Well, it becomes an accuracy thing too. If you can't hold steady, you're just being more ethical by doing what you're doing.
Yep.
That's exactly right. I don't want to get in that situation where I'm drawn back and, there's always that waiting period to make a good, clean shot. And I don't want to be in that situation where I accidentally slip up, hit my release, and, here I've got a deer stuck in the hindquarters. I don't want that.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
So you're saying that a crossbow really is as accurate as a regular bow, or more so, or about the same?
I get that question a lot too. A good archer with a regular bow will shoot more accurate than a crossbow.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty close, but yeah.
Okay.
A crossbow is different. Let me talk about that for a quick second. It's different.
You're shooting it, so I want to hear Dusty's perspective.
It's different, It's a lot out in front of you to for hold and be steady with.
Yep.
It don't have a counterbalance area where you can put a balancing weight on the bow. Yep. It's a lot out in front of you. It's a lot to sit there and hold because hanging a crossbow, you can do it, but it's more ready to go in your hand sitting across your lap. So and naturally I went with a lighter one. I shopped around. My bang for my buck, I did great. I think it's going to be a great bow, and the 8-inch pattern that we were talking about earlier, Randy was telling us that, I can stick 4 arrows at, 30 to 40 yards, no problem, 6 to 8 inches at all. It flies good, shoots good, accurate. I can't be more happy with it.
I think most people use, a shooting stick or something because they don't hold very steady offhand.
Right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's oddball, it's kind of weird, something to get used to, and I like it, and I'm going to stick with it for now.
Gotcha. I want to move on just a couple of little aspects of the bow itself, stuff that I've always kind of wondered about. What about peep sights? My peep sight one time was about as thin as you could get, and I couldn't even see through the thing, so I made some alterations to it.
Yep.
What kind of peep sights are on the market? What do you put in bows? What should I be thinking about when I consider a peep sight?
Well, I noticed you wear glasses.
Yes.
So they actually have corrective lens peep sights now.
No kidding.
Yes. And I have a lot of customers that come in and they can't see their pins are blurry. Well, we can put a peep sight in that'll clear that up. The peep sight designs have changed a lot now. The bows are shorter axle to axle length, so you have to have an angled peep. So it's nice and square to your eye when you get to full draw. Mm-hmm. So they've come a long ways with that stuff too.
Okay. Gotcha. This is, I'm just dissecting the bow as I think as somebody that doesn't know a lot about it, would wonder, what the heck is this thing for?
Yep.
All right, so we got peep sight out of the way. What the string that goes from the bow itself to the string, the rubber?
Oh, the alignment tube.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the alignment tube. How important is that thing?
Well, if you have a string that's not a balanced bowstring, which means that string will twist as you draw back, you need that rubber tube to align your peep sight so it's straight at full draw.
Right.
Now, a lot of the companies now have, there's some really good strings out there. They're a balanced bowstring. So when you draw back, your peep sight stays straight without that rubber tube.
Gotcha.
So
now that rubber tube has, that's the one thing that is my nemesis on my bow.
Yep.
It gets dried out. If I don't pay attention to it, I end up, it's snapped off in my face a few times, and I've missed deer because of this stupid thing. I guess of all the things that are on the bow, that's one of the things you actually have to pay attention to a lot.
You wouldn't have to, though, because you need a new string anyway. So you should get a balanced bowstring, and you can eliminate that whole situation.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yep.
The stabilizer. You see them on all bows. They've been on every bow. There's always a spot to put one. There's always a screw hole to put one in there.
Yep.
How important is a stabilizer?
Sometimes you won't notice it at 15 or 20 yards, but if you start backing up 30 and 40 yards, your groups are going to get tighter. The thing is, everything's bolted on fairly high on your bow, your sight, your quiver, and all that stuff. And you need a counterbalance on the bottom to keep that bow level. Ideally, you want to try to have the bow sit fairly level with an open grip and not tip forward or back too much.
Yep.
Sometimes you can't accomplish it perfect, but anything's better than nothing.
Gotcha. The strap that goes around your hand.
Yeah, the wrist strap.
Is that an essential piece?
You want to have a relaxed grip when you shoot the bow. That's the biggest accuracy problem with bows is people grabbing their bows too tight. So with that wrist strap on, it allows you to have a loose grip, and that catches the bow versus your hand catching it. So as far as an accuracy standpoint goes, it's a big one.
Gotcha.
Yep.
The cams that are on today's market, they've changed from where they were 15 years ago.
Yep.
What type of technology where's the evolution of the cam? Where has it come from and where is it today?
Well, 15, 20 years ago, it was basically a round wheel. And they have a string side, which is round, and then they've got a cam side of the wheel that's a little bit oblong. Well, now it's all energy. I mean, it's all an energy wheel. So the cams are 3-4 times the size as they were back then. So a lot more let off. The other big thing is the years ago, you had wheels that were kind of spongy. When you got back to full draw, there was, some sponginess back there. Now they've got draw stops where these bows actually lock into full draw. So it's more consistent.
Gotcha. Interesting. Dusty, what else you got?
String silencers. Let's talk a little bit about string silencers.
Good one. That's a good one.
Yep. There's a lot of good ones out there. You just got to keep in mind, if you have, one of those balanced bowstrings, whenever you put something into the string, it can affect your peep sight rotation as it deteriorates. But there's a lot of good ones that go on the outside of your string. Now you're also seeing these string dampening systems that the bows are coming out with, and they're stock. And it's basically a dampener that goes right below the grip of your bow, and it comes out and makes contact with the string so that you don't need a silencer. It stops that string oscillation after the shot. So, that makes a big difference.
Interesting.
Right on. Okay. Let's talk about the sight window a little bit. Is there most of the bows? Is that a different set placement on every bow, or is that pretty standard? The sight window area.
They're all drilled. They call it an AMO standard, so that everything fits, on pretty much any sight window. But some of your shorter axle bows have a very small sight window, and if somebody has a very low anchor point, you may not even be able to shoot that bow. So, I mean, that's when you go in to buy a bow. That's a big factor too.
Yep.
Explain brace height.
Yeah, brace height is the distance from the grip to the string. To try to keep it simple here, if it's 7 inches and above, you'll have a very forgiving bow. Below 7 inches, you'll have a fast bow, but very difficult to shoot. We don't recommend, under 7 inches for anybody that's fairly new at shooting. If you've got a consistent form and you have to have, a ton of speed, then you can go that route. But we generally try to keep it 7 inches and above.
Right. Is that something that can be changed by different grips, or how do you determine where your brace height, how do you change it? Or
technically, your bows are designed to a certain brace height.
It's right in the design.
It is, yeah.
Grip has nothing to do with the brace height.
Not necessarily. It's your less brace height bows have more of what's called a reflex, where the grip is way behind the limb pockets of the bow.
Right. No, if you buy a new bow, can you change out different grips for different hands?
Most of your big manufacturers, yeah. I know Hoyt's got 3 or 4 different grips you can put on their bows. Just about every company does. But there's also a lot of custom grip companies out there, so that you can get, there's torqueless grips. There's some really good stuff out there.
Yeah, that brings out, that's a good point there. It may be you got a great bow. Mm-hmm. It may just be the wrong grip for you.
Yep, that's very true.
And it'll throw you off quite a bit. I noticed that when I was shooting compound that I did do a grip change, and man, it made a major difference the way the bow fit in my hand as far as being able to release the pressure from trying to hold the bow.
Even the material. A lot of people like a rubber grip because it's nice and it's soft and it's warm when it's cold, but they're also sticky, so it can make you torque the bow more than a wood grip will.
That's a good point. Right. Yeah, never thought about that. Interesting. Yep.
You won't see too many of your top-end target shooters shooting with any grip. They basically shoot right off the bare riser of the bow because it's more consistent, it's more squared off, and they can feel their grip more consistent that way.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
That's very interesting. All right, let's talk about the piece where all the action kind of happens, and we need to go talk about some releases too at some point. Just to that piece where the release touches the bowstring. I've seen all kinds of variations.
Yeah.
It's like I've seen the release wrap around the bow itself or the bowstring itself.
Yep.
You've got the nocks there to know where to place the release, but I've also seen the string that tied on one side and the other, and you hook onto the string. What's the best, most appropriate setup there?
We do the majority with a string loop, which is you hook your release to the loop that we tie onto the string. Mm-hmm. There's metal versions out there, which they work okay. But the whole thing with that string loop is that it puts you behind the pressure point of the arrow. So you're not pushing up on the arrow like you would with a knock point. All the forces are behind the arrow instead of below it.
Yeah.
But it also allows you to kind of torque that string a little bit and not be torquing the main string of the bow.
Gotcha.
Which you can't do with like a metal style loop. So string loops they're easy to replace. They last a long time. We do the majority with that.
Okay. Yeah. I always wondered about that because my setup right now is my release is metal and it connects onto the string itself. It always seemed like it was kind of a bad idea.
Do you have a knock point?
There was a knock point. Yeah.
See, the situation with your bow is a short axles. If you draw back and let down, you have to re-knock your arrow because it pinches off the string.
Right.
You don't have that with a string loop.
Okay.
You draw back and let down, it stays seated.
So having a string loop is probably the most appropriate thing to do.
It would help with your accuracy quite a bit.
Okay. Yep. All right. Interesting.
I know a few people that ran into, they was shooting a release right off the string, and they didn't realize at the time the damage that was being caused there.
Yeah, there's definitely a pinch point there, and we reserve a lot of bows when they have knock points because it separates that serving, and if you don't realize it, then you start cutting into your string.
Right. And
something
I need to do.
Yeah,
that's disaster zone there.
Yep.
What about the releases themselves? Have those advanced any?
Yeah. I mean, you've got, just with rifle triggers, you've got adjustable triggers and all that. Now we have releases that have infinite adjustment as far as, the way to pull, the travel, everything. You've got your index finger releases and you've also got thumb releases out there. Most of your target shooters will shoot a thumb style release, but still a lot of your hunters like the wrist strap model index finger releases because they're attached to your wrist.
Yeah.
When you say thumb release, is that something that you like? Is you talking about the release that's a grip in your fingers?
Yeah, they're a handheld release, usually machined aluminum, and those have a lot of travel adjustment. I mean, you can get those right down to a couple pounds of pull. So, yeah.
Do people shoot fingers anymore?
Very few.
Is that right?
Yeah, the bows just aren't designed for it.
Yeah.
Years ago, all the bows were 40, 44 inches an axle. Now it's hard to find one over 34.
Right.
And there's just too severe of an angle there. It just doesn't work. People do it, but it's not, the bows aren't designed for it.
I still have my old glove and, I can't get anywhere close to the accuracy as I can with a release.
No.
Not even close. No, that's crazy. Well, guys, we're we're beyond an hour now, and I'm sure Randy needs to get home.
That went by quick.
And you have a very short drive. I'm pretty sure the traffic is pretty clear.
I think I can make it.
I think you can make it, yeah.
Off the street, huh?
Exactly. The commute home will be pretty uneventful, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Dusty, anything from you to wrap this up a little bit?
Randy, we appreciate your time, and we're doing an informal getting you on here for everybody to kind of understand the aspects of a compound bow versus a crossbow, safety tips, techniques, different things. And I think you've covered about all you can cover with us today, and we really appreciate you having you on the show.
Yeah, Randy, that was awesome. You really spilled your guts, and we appreciate it.
Well, it's good to educate people with all this stuff.
Absolutely.
There's a lot out there, a lot of questions.
I learned so much tonight. It's crazy.
I'm going to tell Jay right now, we need to have you back on for another session, Randy. I think we can get a little more deeper than what we are tonight.
Absolutely. I know it's a long walk, but I can probably make it happen.
All right. And I promise to fill you up with another Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Those are pretty good.
Excellent. I would appreciate a report card. What are you going to grade me on?
Maintenance on your bow and if the bow is actually set up for you. And,
okay.
Do you shoot a fixed blade broadhead?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, if they're tuned good, like I said, every arrow's got to come out of your quiver. It's got to be the same. So. Do
you do the same report card for everybody that walks in? Or, you just kind of I just get into it and make it the way I want it to be?
Yeah. I mean, I'll make suggestions to you, but I'm pretty laid back with that. I try not to change it too much.
Okay. Well, I'm going to post my report card on the blog when this thing airs, and I want to see how I did and then make all those notes about the things that I can improve, because I bet there are a lot of guys out there just like me.
Oh yeah,
they need to hear this show and make all those adjustments too.
Yep. Even the small adjustments make a big difference.
And that wraps up the old episode 15, our conversation with master bow technician Randy Gagne of Morse's Sporting Goods, originally recorded back in 2013. If you didn't know his name before, you do now. And if you've ever picked up a bow and wondered whether it's really set up for you, then you just listened to a masterclass. Even more than a decade later, Randy's insights still hold true. And while the gear has changed, the fundamentals haven't. Proper fit, solid tuning, quality arrows, and ethical shooting. Randy reminded us then, and it's even more relevant now, every arrow out of your quiver should fly the same. Since we recorded this, Randy's kept right on doing what he does best, fitting bows for hunters all over New England. But now, he's also expanded into taxidermy. So not only is he helping folks make the shot, he's preserving the story that follows. It's a beautiful evolution that we'll be following up on in a future episode. And this is just the beginning. The BBR Evergreen Series is all about honoring those foundational conversations, revisiting the knowledge, the guests, and the gear that shaped the hunting world we live in today. We'll be remastering and re-releasing more of our early episodes soon, but we're not stopping there. We'll also be sprinkling in brand new interviews with past guests and emerging voices alike. So whether you're an old school listener or just found the show today, this series is for you. If you enjoyed today's episode, the best thing you can do is share it, text it to a hunting buddy, post it on your story, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. It helps more hunters find the show. And don't forget to visit bigbuckregistry.com to subscribe, read show notes, and access the full library of episodes, past and present. Check out our latest extracurricular projects too, the Tag Soup comic strip and the BBR Music Collective. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, hunt smart, stay ethical, and shoot straight. This is J. Scott Ammon, signing off from the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunt Podcast. We'll see you soon in the next Evergreen episode.
As we move on with hearts so strong, echoes of nature sing our song. In every rustle, a story's told of days gone by and hunts of old. Listening close to Deer Hunt by the Big Buck Registry, sharing tips and tales, it's where we ought to be.